What is up, modern leader? This is Marc Hildebrand. I want to thank you for the interest in my audiobook, Mastering Your Life Through Self-Coaching. I wanted to give you a quick preview of the first 2 chapters, and then I'll get back to you in the end to talk about how you can get the rest of it. Without further ado, let's go. Introduction. My name is Marc, and I was a law enforcement officer, L-E-O. I thought it best to start this way because that's how I really screwed up everything before learning what you're going to read about. Being a law enforcement officer was my identity. I thought doing that work meant I had to sacrifice the other areas of my life to become the best leader I could be for work. Truth was, I could never achieve the best if I didn't take care of those other areas first. You see, no one ever wants to follow someone who is good in one area while the rest of their life is falling apart. Now, as a police officer, I worked for the city of Los Angeles for 20 years. I've learned a lot, not just from the career, but also from the people that I surrounded myself with who helped prove that it was possible for me to own multiple areas of my life and become a leader of leaders. What you'll read in this book isn't just the framework I used to turn it all around and to get myself to show up for myself, my family, and the world. It's also something that will apply to anyone in any walk of life. The principles are universal. I've used the same principles to help thousands of entrepreneurs in my mastermind teams and certification program to show up and take the action they want to take. These are people who are like me, who could talk themselves out of doing anything. This structure will work for you too, regardless of whether you're a Leo or not. Now, you'll hear bits and pieces of my story as you go through this book, but what I want you to know more than anything is that if it's possible for me, it's possible for you too. You see, I was a gang cop working massive amounts of overtime with search warrants, court, extended end of watch, all of it. I was also overweight, at one point reaching 100 pounds more than I weigh today. My family was completely on the back burner, even though I said they were really important. I was also very negative, and I pushed off any personal development and really anything revolving around coaching as BS and said I just didn't have the time. I was not a person of action. I had no self-discipline, and I was not a person I'd want to hang out with today. Yet, I'm the one now writing a book to share how I turned it around. What I'm known for now, getting myself and others to show up and act, was not something that I did very well. You don't get to the low point I was at life if you're acting on what you know you need to act on. As a matter of fact, I was great at talking myself out of taking any kind of action that didn't give me immediate results, at least not until the point when life brought me down to my knees and forced me to be open to what you'll read about in this book. Sometimes pain does that to us. It gives us the push to decide. For me, it wasn't until my son was born and he had to spend 73 straight days in the neonatal intensive care unit, the NICU, that I realized that I had my priorities in the wrong order. I needed to find an answer to get myself to show up in all those areas, not just one. I had let myself go physically and mentally and felt completely detached from my family. After my wife gave birth, it was a terrible experience to have to leave our son at the NICU while we went home and stared at his empty crib. At the time, I knew I needed to make a change, but I had no idea where to start. Back then, I didn't know what you're about to learn about in this book, so I continued to struggle. A few years later, I ended up developing shingles from all the stress I had brought into my life because despite trying to make my health and fitness a priority, I had not removed anything else from my plate and I just kept adding. Now let me tell you, I did a great job of pretending that I had it all together. Just ask any of my friends at the time. Now the path from there wasn't easy, as the best lessons in life never are, and it took me years to figure them out. I'm hoping to prevent you from going through what I experienced, but if you're there already, I just want to say, dive in, because you have connected with me at the right time. Let's speed up this process for you. Now, I want you to know that I have a ton of resources that can help in addition to this book. I've created a free workbook to help you personalize what we'll be going over because I know there is never a one-size-fits-all method. In the workbook, I'll pull out what will fuel you to show up and help you design a plan to go out and create what you want, no matter what area of life you're looking to grow in. To get a free copy of the workbook, head to www.modernleadership.us/workbook. Now, if you've gotten this as an audiobook only and want a physical copy, which is what I personally prefer, you can get a copy of the paperback at modernleadership.us/book. It can also serve as an amazing gift for others. If you've received this book as a gift, I hope by the time you get to the end, you've reached out and thanked them for the connection. I also have our Modern Leadership YouTube channel that's free to listen to while you drive, cook, or clean. It will help you stay on point because who you surround yourself with is vital. Watching videos, reading books, and participating in mastermind teams is the way that I personally continue to grow. You'll also hear me talk a lot about my current mastermind team that I've built for family-driven entrepreneurs, as well as our Push Coach certification that was co-created by my mentor, Josh Coates, and me. Whether you like to be coached along with our team or learn how to be coached yourself, if you ever find yourself in need of that level of support, head to my site for details. Before we jump in, I just want to take a second to appreciate you. I know you may not have the same career as I did, which is okay because these principles are universal. We greatly appreciate you for your support. We couldn't do what we do without you. However, I did want to take a second and thank those who do share this career. Having been a police officer for 20 years, I know sometimes the job can feel thankless. The truth is, people need us now more than ever, and the ones who do appreciate us, who outnumber the ones who don't, often are much quieter about it because they fear repercussions if they speak out. I can't tell you the number of people who reach out to me daily on social media to thank us or who tell me under their breath while I'm on the line during a protest how thankful they are to our profession for helping keep order. Just know they're out there despite the information you hear in the media or from some of our partners in our field. But here's the most important reason I want to thank you. And that is I see you, despite the career, getting up early to work out so you can protect those who can't protect themselves and make it home safe at end of watch. I see you spending extra time to connect with your spouse and kids when you're exhausted after you get home, sometimes feeling like a zombie. And I see you working overtime, getting off at 7 a.m. from a long shift and trying to live a normal life, getting called back into work on a day off, going to court to sit around for hours before you have to get back to work for your graveyard shift that night, missing lunch, putting yourself in harm's way, seeing things daily that no human should ever see in their lifetime, and doing traffic control in 115-degree weather, all with a smile on your face. Okay, that last part doesn't always happen, but you get what I mean. I also see you leading the troops from the front through your actions, both at work and at home. Even keeping morale high when a policy comes down that you may not agree with. I see you shielding your people from a positional leader who could possibly ruin morale for everyone. And I see the millions of other scenarios you deal with daily that I haven't even brought up. I see it all, and I just wanted to say, thank you for serving. You're an incredible leader already. The world and I greatly appreciate you for it, and if no one has told you today, let me be the one who does. Thank you.
Section 1. The Framework. Chapter 1. Taking ownership of your part of the equation. This is where we start. One of the easiest things in the world to do is blame others or outside circumstances for where we currently are. It is never the outside circumstances. Using the outside world as my excuse was the number one reason I kept myself stuck for so many years. You most likely heard that you can't control what happens to you, but you can control the way you think about it, right? That sounded like total BS to me when I heard it. This was a wall I built up to protect myself from actual growth. No Leo, or really any human on the planet, likes to feel like the victim, like life is happening to them instead of the other way around. One of the things that we will talk about over and over again in this book is taking ownership of your part of the equation. Because no matter how you look at it, you're always a part of it. Not only are you a part of it, but from your perspective, you're the most important part of it. I remember hearing a story about two sons early on in my personal journey. They were identical twins born into a family where domestic violence, drugs, and alcohol were part of everyday life. Later in life, both brothers were interviewed. One of the brothers was what most of us would deem as extremely successful in their life. He had a great job he loved, 2 kids he adored, and a wife who really was his best friend. The other brother had been caught up in drugs and gangs, had been in jail multiple times for domestic violence, and did not have any close connection with his kids. When they asked both why they had turned out the way they did, they had the same answer. You see, because of the way that I grew up. I had no choice. One took what happened to him and turned it into his life sentence, while the other took it as an opportunity to see what he didn't want out of life, so he never went down that path himself. Even though this may be a made-up story, I can't tell you the number of times I've come across very similar situations in my real life. My own life isn't quite as dramatic, but it is similar in nature. My brother Joseph and I grew up in the same environment in Los Angeles. Our parents went through a divorce and we were struggling to make ends meet, so they didn't have much available time to spend with us and were always at work. That's when friends became a primary focus for my brother, while I started to pour energy into work so that at the end of the day I could buy some food since all we had in the fridge was beer and mustard. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me, and I'm glad I was put in that situation. Not only did it help me thrive, but it also taught me how I wanted to show up in life, especially as a parent. And no knock on my parents. They did the best they could with what they had, and I would not be the person I am today if they had not taught me so many valuable lessons. It made me step up and take ownership and responsibility, something that has helped me in so many areas of my life. My brother, on the other hand, took a different path. I love him to death, but peer pressure got the best of him. Having spent time around drugs, in custody, struggling with relationships, becoming a father multiple times over, yet still trying to be the best dad he can be, his life is much different than mine. And it's not because of the circumstances we were put into. It has everything to do with the ownership we took and our responses to those circumstances. What's crazy is that I had no idea why my brain went down that path because I knew nothing about what we are about to break down in this book. Some people consider it luck, but I feel it was much deeper than that. I believe there was something inside of me that knew that I needed to take ownership of my life again, which ultimately started me on a path that would require a whole lot of growth. Let me just start by saying that as you go through your own journey, it's not going to be perfect. I shortened up that story above, but remember, the reason I'm writing this book is because I screwed it up for a long time. Some of those lessons that I learned inadvertently from my parents started to shift into my life, and I didn't even realize it. Even though it may seem like a quick turnaround, it most definitely was not. There was plenty of negative stories and experiences that came up over the journey and continue to this day. That's because life is always going to be 50-50. You're going to make mistakes, have bad reactions, experience negative feelings, and that's okay. When Brooke Castillo, my mentor and creator of the Life Coach School, shared that with me, it helped me breathe a sigh of relief. There's no way around negativity unless you're not looking for a meaningful life. I heard this quote recently that said that discomfort is the price of a meaningful life. And I truly believe that you wouldn't be reading this book if you didn't want to create a meaningful life for yourself and for your family. When things get uncomfortable, even while reading this book, it's your job to lean in because your brain is trying to keep you comfortable. It's also a sign, though, that you need to hear that point more than the rest. One of the most important ways you can lean into the uncomfortable is to know that the answers are out there. There's a concept I learned early on that allowed me to change the way I took ownership of my life. It's the idea around having a closed and an open mindset. A closed mindset says that things are the way they are, they can't be changed, there is no answer, and the way we've always done it is the only way. This was me for decades. It's when you say, I don't have time, as if that's the truth. It's not the truth. Well, unless you say it is, and then believe it over and over and over again, because then you'll manifest it every time. If you have an open mindset, that means you know the answer is out there. You just may not know it right now, and that's okay. There's something out there, a resource or a different way to do it that could make it possible for you. You've just got to be willing and open to finding it. Going from a closed to an open mindset is like going from thinking, I don't have the time to, how might I make the time? Can you feel how different those two statements make you feel? One feels like the fact that you don't have the time is set in stone, but the other says there's a possibility. What's incredible about our brains, and you'll learn more about this later, is that you will find what you seek. When you're open to the possibility, you'll find it. If you're closed off to anything different, you'll find that to be true too. Not because it doesn't exist, but because your mind is closed to not even accepting the idea. Ask yourself which one feels better for you. Now, I don't want you to think that if you have an open mindset in one area, it automatically transfers to the others, because it doesn't. You must do the work it takes to translate that into other areas. It does not happen automatically. There are some areas right now that you and I have closed mindsets around. Becoming aware of this is the first step. As we dive into the book and you start to picture the area you want to see growth in, I want you to be real with yourself. Ask yourself whether you have an open or a closed mindset. Make sure it's open before you dive in, or you'll be going from page to page thinking about all the reasons why this isn't going to work for you or why it doesn't apply to you. The sad thing is that the people who are open to it will be reading the same words, yet finding the evidence that it does apply to them. And those people will be the ones who have their lives changed forever. Don't do that to yourself. You deserve it as much as anyone else. On the topic of growth, my mentor Josh Coates, whom you'll hear me repeatedly talk about in this book because of the impact he has made and continues to make every day on my life, he said something extremely powerful to me early on in my coaching career. He said, your outward success is a reflection of your inner growth. Meaning, if you want the outside to change, you need to first focus on the inside. Personal growth is the transformation that must come first before there's any outside evidence that it's working. And when it starts to work, it's like a seed sprouting up from the underground. When it first sprouts out of the ground, you may be upset that it's not growing as quickly as you want it to grow. That's because you can't see the roots and the growth that's happening underground. If you're not careful, you'll pick the sprout and try to plant it somewhere else, effectively killing it. Don't do that. Just keep watering it and giving it sunlight and proper soil, and before you know it, the growth above ground will catch up to what's underneath. Make a decision. There's one thing I want to talk about before we jump in. That is the idea of making a decision. You heard my story that I decided to do something about my life when I hit what I believed was my rock bottom. I want to make sure that you understand what that means. Deciding means that you're going to do it until it works, not until it gets hard. The most freeing feeling comes after you decide. Our brains try to trick us into thinking there's a right and wrong decision, or that we should put it off because now is not the right time. The worst thing you could do for yourself is to be in indecision mode. It feels terrible. You are deciding at that moment, but it just doesn't feel like it. You're deciding not to do it by default. There's a different type of energy you'll get from making a decision on purpose versus the decision being made by default. Whenever I'm given the opportunity to decide, I weigh the pros and cons and then decisively act. Whatever I decide to do or not do, I stand by that decision and I move on. I choose to believe that it was the best decision based on the information I had at the time, and it would be unfair to beat myself up about it later after I had new information. It's when I'm moving back and forth between the two decisions or putting it off until I have enough information to 100% know it's the right decision that I feel anxious. I've come to realize that, for me, it's a terrible place to be because it flows through everything I touch until I make that decision. So instead, I decide one way and I stand by it. I saw something pop across my Instagram newsfeed that said most people take a long time to decide, but are quick to change a decision. Successful people are quite the opposite. They make decisions quickly and are slow to change them. Even though I can see both sides of that coin, I most definitely agree with the latter statement. So many people take years to decide, and after the first week, they change their minds because what they chose hasn't given them tangible results. Don't do that for yourself. That could have been that thing that changed your life forever if you had given it enough time. Decide to go all in or decide to go all out. It's the most freeing thing you'll experience once you do it. You won't be using any more brain power and can divert it to what you really want. I want you to do the same with this book. Decide. If you're ready to go all in with this book, then it's go time. It's time to take ownership of where you are right now and get uncomfortable. Your results are right around the corner.
Hey, it's Mark again, and I want to thank you for listening. Now, if you enjoyed the preview and you want a physical copy of the book, definitely head over to Amazon. You can get both the paperback and the book on Audible. But I also want to say that for the same price that you pay for either of those, you can get both the audiobook and the PDF version by grabbing a spot inside of our YouTube Inner Circle. This also includes 2 bi-weekly calls from both me and my powerful and amazing co-host and wife, Teresa, where we help you implement some of the strategies that we talked about in the audiobook so you can create a business you love, connect deeper with your family, and get into the best physical and mental shape of your life. If that's something you're interested in, check out the link below or click the join button on our channel. It'll break down a little bit about how that program works. Regardless, I want to tell you thank you for being here and for what you do out there every single day. The world needs more leaders just like you. Keep spreading your powerful message, and above all, keep leading from the front. Bye.